Fat Tony over here. That's me. My wife doesn't really like that. I think she's in denial over my physical stature. God bless her. I wasn't necessarily aiming to make a video about this. Where am I? Am I over here? Am I over there? What's going on around here? But it's kind of reared its ugly head, and I was hoping that I was getting away from it, but I never got away from it. I stripped the roof on this, and it was a peach. We were just some bare steel and some epoxy and some primer and a little bit of body work and some gray paint and some black paint. You know, it's painted a couple times, whoop-de-dee-doo. I was quite happy with that on account of the one thing that didn't rear its ugly head. Ugly as shit on a white rag, but it reared its arse here now. As I got down here, Lacquer, come here for a minute. What are you doing over there? Here now. Whoop! Lacquer is what I'm talking about. No, where is it? Where'd our lacquer go? Well, there it is there. That's factory green lacquer. It's here and there and there and here and here and there. So what that leads me to surmise, to my surprise, I surmised, there is holes from some trim. This was a vinyl top car. And what I'm figuring most likely happened was when they painted it, the roof was most likely brown, green car with a brown roof, especially once you took the vinyl off, because it was brown with oxidized metal, kind of rust, I'm guessing. Anyways, there's a few pits up in here, not real bad though, light pitting. So I reckon what they done is when they decided that they were going to ditch the vinyl and paint the car, well, they stripped the roof, you know, like cleaned it right off and got all the surface rust right off of it. So that set me up for disappointment because I thought maybe they'd done that to the whole car and there wasn't going to be lacquer on it. But there's lacquer on it. We don't like lacquer. We don't like lacquer. Lacquer's a bummer. We be bumming, yo. So I dug a hole here. Let me show you something. Digging a hole, as they say. Oh, in the trunk lid. So in your 2-dimension, whoop-de-doo. That's bad. I mean, can you see my finger moving up and down? I don't know if it's 1/8 of an inch, but, you know, actually, I'll bet you that isn't a damn near 1/8 of an inch. You know, and I was kind of wondering, because when I looked at it, this gap is really tight back here. Hey, that's tight. And yet here, you know what I mean? Like our trunk lid is what do they call that? Proud. Oh, it's so proud. A lot of pride going on here. It's hanging over the quarter. I think somebody's probably moved it back, and I'll bet you that's on account of, if you do that twice on either side of that gap, that doesn't leave much room for gap anymore. See what I'm saying? So we're going to peel some paint off of here. See, I've already started over here. I moved this over because I don't want to shoot all this dust straight up my furnace hole. Who does? So what I'm going to do here, what I'm fitting to do, is I'm going to clean a bunch of paint off. And there's a lot of paint to clean off here. I didn't have to do it this way on the roof, what I got to do here, because somebody had taken the lacquer off of the roof. Now I can give you a quick lesson. Is this a lesson? I don't think that I'm smart enough to give people a lesson. But what I learned ever so many years ago is lacquer is what's referred to as thermoplastic. It has no catalyst. It is it's a bunch of shit, whatever they use to make up paint. And then it's mixed with some binders and some polymers and some resins and some other goo, big bucket of piss, basically. And they mix the plastic. They just mix the shit together, all right? They mix the powder and the bucket of piss, and then it makes paint. All the powders is what gives you your solids and your colors and stuff, and then they mix it up with the solvents and the hooja-fuzz and the thingamawopsis. And then, so the lacquer, you spray it, and it hits the surface as the liquid, and as it sits there, all these solvents and whatnot, the lion's share of them, they evaporate out of it. As they evaporate out of it, it turns to a solid. See what I'm saying to you? So in that, with the lacquer, there you go. Once it turns to solid, your paint is dry. And it just gets drier and drier until it's dry. Whereas with a paint with a catalyst, so they use a different mixture in the bucket of piss. I don't know what it is. Don't ask me. I don't know. And then you put a catalyst in it, and it hardens it up. There's a chemical reaction between the two, and it links it together and it hardens it up. And once it hardens it up, now it becomes what they call thermal set. Thermoplastic, I got a hair in my mouth. When they come up with thermoplastic, they're referring to the plastic as the flexible nature of it. Okay? I don't know why. Oh, come here, you little bastard. I don't know why, but that's what they've done. That's why they refer to it as plastic. So the thermoplastic, the two words thermal and plastic, means that if you heat it up again, it gets flexible. It gets plastic again. Thermoplastic. Thermal set means that once it's set, the heat will not. It won't plasticize it again. It won't make it flexible again. So lacquer paint is a bitch because as you warm it up, it gets pliable. It gets soft again. So to strip it, to get it off of there, the friction between your thingamawatsis and your hoojamafuzz, it heats it up and it turns to schnot when it gets warm and gooey, and then within a few seconds, it turns back into plastic again. It gets hard again. So it gets into your paper and it clogs your paper up, and you can't get it out of there because it gets in there when the snot gets in there, and that snot dries fast, and then it turns into a hunk of plastic stuck to your paper. So it's a bummer. You can go through a whole lot of paper. So in stripping this much product off of here, you could take this thing to a blaster and have a blaster blast it, because that's what blasters do. They blast stuff, them blasting bastards. The old blasting bastards. That was a mouthful. But with this much product on it, they're going to dig at it. You know what I'm saying to you? They're going to focus on it. And it's going to be tough for a blaster to get this much product off without adversely affecting your panels. And I don't give a shit what they say. I've seen it, I've watched it, and I have loaded panels back into the back of customers' trucks in the past because they were guaranteed that, we use this new stuff and it's awesome and it works and it's bitchin', and they bring their hood to me and their hood is junk because it's like a fat kid jumping on a waterbed, and it's the blaster that did that to it. So with this much product, doesn't matter what they use, they're going to be digging at it and they're going to wreck it. The chances are pretty good. I guess I shouldn't say they're going to wreck it, because maybe you got somebody that won't, and maybe you don't. Maybe you got somebody that will, and that's a bummer. Then you'd be bumming, yo. So why did I put this on here? This is 36 grit. I'm covering a lot of. Oh, son of a bitch! That was the old knee hole into the exhaust pipe. That reset my thoughts. Oh, I put 36 grit on here. And the reason I done that is because I got a whole lot of shit to get off of here. And the lacquer is at the very bottom of it. Actually, there's two layers of lacquer. There's lacquer paint, and there's like some red oxide lacquer primer over that. So if I just went at this with some 80 grit or something on a wheel, which is what I took off of this, because we'll get to that, and started trying to dig at it. As I'm taking my white off, my black off, then what else we got? Then we got some gray primer underneath there. Then we've got some more black. Then we've got some yellow primer. Then we've got some epoxy. Then we've got some gray paint. As I'm digging all that stuff off, every swipe of that is warming up the surface. And now by the time I get down to that lacquer that's at the bottom, it's going to be a layer of snot at the bottom. So it's just no good. It's just, if you want to believe, I mean, just try it, would you? And you'll see. So I'm going to hit it with a big bag of rocks here and try to knock that surface off quick, and then we can get down to some finer grits. Lacquer's a bummer. Did I say that? Look at this brutality, would you? Here, look at all this. Hey, that's a pile. You see that? Where are you? There you are. Look at that. That's how much paint is on here. That's what you call a pile of paint. That's what I call a pile of paint. That's some pile of paint you got there, B. So what I got left on here is I got the factory green paint and then some red oxide primer, and then there's just some bits here and there. The reason for the old motion of the ocean here is I'm trying not to heat it up. But even that warms it up. Because like I said, as soon as you heat it up, I'll show you when I get some on here. As soon as you start to warm that up, this green, it's just going to turn to snot. Sticky snot. You know the old line where the bear comes across a rabbit and he asks the rabbit if shit sticks to his fur? Well, think of this as bear fur. It's kind of a funny joke. See that little guy? That little booger there? That's what I was talking about. Now that's a hunk of the lacquer, and it's heating up, and it's stuck there. Hey, you got to scrape it off. Now eventually what'll happen if you keep getting that shit stuck to there while you're doing it, it'll stick together. Another piece will stick to that piece and that piece and that piece. And before you know it, you'll have a big ring of it around the paper, a big ring around your rosy there. And it ain't going to sand no more. And your paper in here will be just dandy. It'll be brand new. But you'll have a little 3/16 inch ring of lacquer around there. And the paper's garbage. Like I said before, if this wasn't lacquer, you could just start here with your machine, and you could just clean her off. And you'd be done by now. But it's lacquer. You kind of got to think of it like you're... Get up there and scoop some out of there. And then come down here and scoop some. Then go back up there and scoop some out. See? It's hard to do it like this. There's just like a little hunk of plastic on there, hey? And one sticks to more, and it builds up and builds up. It might seem logical and seem to save more time to just carry on, like with the disc, and rip her right down, because it would go quicker. Absolutely, it would strip her down quicker. But here, I'll get you in just a little bit closer. If you was to do that and rip her right down, well, as it is here now, we can see where our dents are. And I mean, some of these you can't really feel, but the flat disc moving over it, right, it hovered over the low spot. So actually you can see there's actually quite a few. It looks like it might have some hail damage on it. But if we were going over this with the 36, I mean, the 36 is a big rock on there, right, versus the 80 grit. So that big rock, it would have guaranteed 90% of these. These are a little bit bigger over here, so it probably would have left some of that, but all these things, it would have dug them right out. And so we'd be standing here looking at a surface that looks more like that. See, now that's just ground because there was a dent in there that I pushed out. So you see how that looks like that. See how that looks like that? But then the 80, well, shit, don't look at that. But that looks like that, the 36 grit, but the 80 is a nice smooth surface. What I'll do there, as well as there, as well as up there, as well as up there, is in the 80 grit. I'm going to go over this with a sander next, a DA sander with 80 grit on it. And the reason that I like to do that is it's going to make a nicer, smoother surface. Because right now you can see you know, it's an even surface, but the scratches are really prominent on it, the 80 grit. So from the wheel. So I'll go over it with the DA and clean it down. And then I'll go over with degreaser and put a shine on it, and then it'll show me where all the dents are. If you carried on with the 36 grit, that doesn't work because you got such a profile on it from the big rocks on it. I mean, if you listen, I don't know if you can hear this. This is 80 grit. And right here, I got quite a few scratches on there's a little bit of a peak there, and the 36 grabbed it. Can you hear the difference? If that whole trunk lid is like that, well, you're going to have to put something on this to give you a surface to be able to find what you have to repair. Because you're not going to feel it in that because that's so rough that it just ain't going to work. It just doesn't. I'm telling you, I've done it, and it just doesn't. There is a lot of guys that do this, and then of course your next step is to put on, nowadays they got whatever the hell it is, high solids 2K epoxy primer, whatever that is. I don't know. Whatever. I thought epoxy was epoxy, but nowadays a rat is a cat. I don't know. What the hell am I even talking about? Anyways, they'll do that, and then they'll block the whole trunk lid out to try to find their dents. Then they'll start doing body work on it, and then they'll miss half of their dents, and then they'll prime it, and then they'll block their primer, and then they'll go back, and then they'll do more body work over top of the primer that they just put on, and then they'll prime it again, and then they'll block it, and then they'll prime it, and repeat and repeat and repeat, and then by the time they're done, they'll have about 35 hours into this trunk lid. I don't like that. So to me, spending this extra time, so for me to take this down with 80 grit versus a grinder, and then go over it with the DA sander afterwards to put a nice surface on it that I can deal with after the fact, I would guess that it probably takes me on this particular panel between a half an hour and 45 minutes of extra time versus just cleaning her right down to the bones with the 36 grit and then winding up with a graveled alley here that I got to try to turn into a skating rink. Is that a good comparison? Because that's what it is. Just look at this artifact, hey? Factory paint, a shitload of pink lacquer primer. And actually, I don't know for sure if this pink stuff, because it's all over. There was a time way back when you could buy putty in a tin, and it was this color red oxide pink shit, and it was like lacquer primer with less liquids in it. It was putty that you'd put on for doing little dents. And way back when, old bodymen and stuff, they would take, if they thought they were making a show car, and their theory was kind of the same as it is now when you might put a skim coat of filler over it, they would take this old pink putty, take a wad of it, put it somewhere else in another tin or a tub or on a board, and pour some lacquer thinner in it and swirl it around, and then they would make it would come out like the consistency of like pancake batter, maybe. You know what I mean? Too thick to spray, but too thick to spray, but too thin to be like a filler. And they'd bloop it on there, and then they would take their big spreader and just spray it over the whole thing, and then let that dry up for a day or two, literally, and then go back and sand over it and then prime it. That might be what's happened here, because it's pretty damn thick, this pink stuff, and pretty much just on this trunk lid, and it's over top of the green. So I'm thinking that this had some hail damage on it, and that's what they done. They just put because lacquer will stick to lacquer. The solvents in a fresh lacquer, they will soften up the previous lacquer enough that it will actually bite. And I mean, this ain't peeling. They might have sanded it, I can't say, but yeah, so that's right over top of the green. We got lacquer, then we got some primer, then we got some paint, and then now we got body filler mixed up over top of all that other shit. And up here we got some kind of green filler in between. We got the pink, then we got the green, then we got more pink. That's quite a core sample, hey? You kind of see here though where the 36 grit gave her a little Pepe Le Pew action there on that peak. I can't really get a good angle on it. Some of 'em a bitch. What I'm trying to get at, though, is if this whole trunk lid was like that, well, you'd have a tough time trying to, see what I'm saying to you? You'd have a tough time. I mean, those are good scratches from the 36 grit. If this whole trunk lid was like that, you'd have a tough time trying to find all these dents and whatnot in it. Whereas as it is now, and normally I wouldn't have gone over it with a 36 grit first, but I mean, there's a lot of shit on here. The old pump and spray degreaser. And with it being finished in the 80 grit like that, it gives you a pretty good, pretty smooth surface. So now when you get it wet and shiny, now if you watch the reflection of that light, it's hard to catch this on camera, but you see the way it dances around in the dents, hey? Even the little guys. See the way the lights spread apart around that little guy? So that's what you look for when you're trying to find your dents. And if these shadows weren't here, you would still see that reflection dance around like that. See the way it dances around on them spots? And again, if this was all in big 36 grit, the big 36 grit alley, it's not going to do that. It's not going to be as prominent as it is. But you see, even them little guys over there. And if you finish it like this, well, now I can go around with a little grinder while it's wet with my little 2.5 inch grinder disc, zing, 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 and I can kiss all those little spots while it's wet, because you don't want to let this just dry on here and walk away from it, because it'll leave a film. So while it's wet, bazinga, bazinga, I can kiss all them little dents, which is quite a few of them, and then I know where all the dents are. And I know where all the dents are when it's shiny. Because a lot of these things, like a little thing like that, you might not catch that blocking out your primer. You know what I'm saying? If you put a coat of filler on this, or a coat of primer, or put some epoxy on it, and then sand it again to try to find your dents, well, chances are pretty good you're going to miss them. You're going to miss some of them. Guaranteed. So until I'm ready to do body work on the whole car, I'm just going to leave the trunk lid as it is, just like this. We got a whole lot more lacquer to whack off of this thing. So that is what I'm going to do. I got some rust pits to dig into up there too. Oh! Where are you? Hoi! Kabam! So, I don't know if you got anything from that. I don't know if I'm trying to teach you anything from that, but there it is. Thanks for watching.